too. So then, but it's like, you know, I got 10 times worse than I had ever been before after that. Because I had that little bit of peace, and I went back out there. And so I ended up in a worse situation than I could have ever been in. So then I ended up, the second time that I rededicated my life, I was on the 4th floor in Princeton Community Hospital. I had been living in South Carolina really bad out there, got beat up really bad to where my eyes was swelled shut, and I had to come back here. And if I wasn't totally blinded that I didn't know I was in the world, I cried all day long. I was just miserable. I hated myself. I didn't want to live anymore, and so I ended up there. I saw things even when I was straight. I mean, I thought there was no hope for me. I mean, I can remember at 12, 13 years old being hopeless. You know, I started having panic attacks in middle school because I would think about my life and there was no way out of the darkness that I was stuck in. And I was having panic attacks then too. I would just start hyperventilating when I would start thinking about how horrible my life was. There was no hope for me. And so that's why, you know, whenever I got out of there, you know, God started working it out. I didn't have an environment, a Christian environment, people to teach me the right way, but God started working it out in ways, you know, that I might not have saw as blessings at the time, but I look back now and I'm thankful for it. You know, I went to jail, and then when I got out of jail, I ended up, you know, I still didn't have the way, but I was put in a program to where I had to be clean. And then I ended up rededicating again, because, you know, I was still surrounded in a mess. I had lived that way for so long, I didn't realize how bad that things I was living in really was. And I was clean myself, but I was living with my boyfriend who was selling drugs at the time, and I had a 6-month-old baby. And I didn't realize that, you know, that was so bad. And then I ended up getting a detention sentence. But right before I went to detention, I went to a church. A pastor came and invited me to church. And I went there and I got saved. And I just kept praying to God. And I said, God, why is my life not working out? And God said, you have to get out of there. You have to get out of that environment. I've never heard His voice before in my life. And He spoke to me and told me to leave. And I couldn't do it. I said, God, I can't make it on my own. You know, I can't just leave here. I have nowhere to go. And so I ended up getting a detention sentence, but that detention sentence saved me from a serious charge. You know, I could have got prison for a lot longer time, but while I was in detention, God started speaking to me, and I made it. I mean, the program I was in, I can say that I was the least likely to succeed. I mean, nobody thought I would succeed. I mean, I was in a really strict program, and the circuit court judge said that if I made it out of that program, that they would have to pick her up off the floor, because nobody thought that I would do it, because the strongholds in my life, and they were so strong that there was no way that anybody believed in me. But while I was there, God started talking to me. I started reading my Bible. Somebody gave me a Bible that I could actually understand. And I was reading my Bible and I was praying, and I would read it out loud to the girls there. And I made up my mind that I was not going to come out of there the same person that I was when I went in. And I wanted every day to help as many people as I could. And people would come to me and they would say, what could you have possibly done to be in here? You're so happy. You're so full of joy. You know, you've got this peace. And I was like, you just have no idea where I came from and what I've been through. But God was just working on me in there. And when I got out, nobody could believe the change in me. You know, I couldn't even believe the change in myself. But God, He worked through a homeless shelter and just different things, you know, to get me to where I need to be and where I'm at today. And when I, you know, stand in church and I'm praising the Lord, you know, I have to give God everything I have. You know, the only thing good in me is Jesus, because I'm a messed up person. And if he wouldn't have came into me, then it's hard to tell where I would be. I'd probably be dead right now. But, you know, I just think about this group, you know, and the change that's coming in this community, because it is just amazing to see that people that you would have never thought, you know, 2 years ago or last year or a couple months ago, everybody's hungry and they're thirsty for something and they need Jesus, and they realize this, and people are coming in that you would never have imagined, and it is so awesome. We were born for such a time as this. God is wanting to raise people up that are not scared to praise Him and to give Him thanks and praise everywhere we go, and to tell people about Him. And I think about, I was reading in John, and it really touched me the other day, because I was reading in John, and I often say, I would think, why did I go through these things, Lord? Why did you allow me to go through these things? But I know one thing, it said that I would be so thankful, that I am now, because if I hadn't been through all those things, I'm thankful for those things, because they have made me this thankful, humble person that I am. I just pray every day that God just keeps me humble, because I don't ever want to think that anything that I do, anything good that comes out of me is of me, but it is all of Him. But when I was reading in John, and they were talking about the blind man, and they asked Jesus, they said, well, who sinned? Why is this man blind? And Jesus said, so that my Father's works could be revealed in him. And that just touched me, because I'm like, that's why, God didn't cause these things to happen to me, but God allowed them to happen to me so that His Father's works could be revealed in me. And I am so thankful for that. I'm like, I'm just really thankful for that. And I just appreciate you guys for, letting us come in here. In this church, I've heard good things about it. And, all we need is people that, in this community, is people that, are willing to accept, the people that's got a little bit of dirt on them coming in, and love on them anyway, because Jesus, He didn't stay in the church. He went out into the highways and the byways and got the people that were really struggling, and the people that were living in sin. And that's what we have to do. And thank you. Love you.
I just want to praise God, because like everyone else here, I shouldn't be here. I should be dead. I should be 6 feet under, and I wouldn't have been going to heaven. I started using when I was about 13, 14 years old, and it started with alcohol, and then it went to marijuana, and then it went to pills, and eventually it went to a needle. And I always said that I would never be like my father, because he was an addict, and he was in my life. I was daddy's little girl when I was younger, and the older I got, the less I seen him. And as a little girl, that broke my heart, to see my dad not be around, and it was because of addiction. And I said I would never be like that. Well, the older I got, the more family problems started happening, the more things happening in school, and it just tortured my mind. And then I didn't know anything about spirits. I didn't know anything about the spiritual warfare that was going on. I wasn't educated. I wasn't brought up in church, nothing like that. And eventually my brother got really sick and was diagnosed with a mental illness, and he was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia. And he would get so paranoid before he was diagnosed that he would hit me and my mom. He was very, very abusive, and we couldn't control him. And that led me deeper into my addiction. And I didn't know where to run. Like I said, I wasn't brought up in church. I wasn't taught about God. I knew there was a God, but I didn't know. I wasn't, Christian. I was never saved. When I turned 18, I had moved to Tennessee, and it was the first time I'd ever accepted God into my life, and I got saved, and I had to move back here. And I eventually started going backwards. I got into a church, but I didn't have people like this. I didn't have support. I didn't have somebody to guide me, to lead me, to show me what I needed to do, to hold me accountable for my actions. And I fell right back into the same spot. I fell back into that darkness. And like Summer said, it's in the Bible. Once you go right and you turn left, you're going to get left, and it's going to get darker, and it's going to get deeper, and it's going to get worse. It's going to be more miserable. You're going to have more suffering, worse than ever before. And I was so miserable that I would sit and I would cut myself. I would slice my wrist, and I would beg God. I would pray for God to give me the strength to cut deeper so I would bleed to death, so I would die. I attempted suicide many times. And when I say I shouldn't be here, I literally shouldn't be here. I took pills upon pills upon pills on top of all kinds of dope on purpose because I didn't want to wake up. And then when I would go to sleep, I would pray not to wake up. And then when I would wake up, I was mad. I was disappointed because I had to live another day. Growing up, I was always taught that my